Last week, the Cuban regime started the trial against 66 people, including 14 minors, as a punishment after being part of the historic July 2021 march. In most of these cases, the prosecution asked up to 30 years in prison, which of course can be considered as a surprise, given the fact that the intention of the Cuban regime has always been on these types of situations to send a clear message to those who want to protest in the future, to those who dare to protest against the Cuban Revolution. The sentences will be done in February 11, and of course, many political analysts believe that the fate of these 66 protesters, including these 14 minors, is already decided, and that the fate of these people will not be exactly the most comfortable one. On this point, it is important to detail that the trial was made on different cities all across Cuba. Unlike many other situations of this matter, unlike many other similar situations, the trial was not made exclusively on capital Havana. As a matter of fact, on this case, the trial was made on different parts, including Havana, of course, Santa Clara, Holguín, and Mayabeque. Nevertheless, the vast majority of this trial was made mostly on Santa Clara. Many people actually believe that the reason why this situation took place, the reason why the Cuban regime decided to make almost the whole trial in Santa Clara, is because it was quite possible that in case that these trials were celebrated in Havana, it could spark another massive protest. So the Cuban regime wanted to prevent this type of crisis to take place, so they decided to make this trial mostly in Santa Clara. On the other hand, which is a pretty significant detail that clearly reveals the way that the Cuban regime operates, many reports pointed out that the Cuban regime didn't allow any single media outlet to film or report about the trials in questions. In fact, Tairi Lorenzo, who is the mother of one of the prosecuted, said that judges claimed that protesters were chanting incendiary claims such as "down the revolution," and of course the legendary phrase that somehow represents the protest against the Cuban regime, "Patria y vida." So the fact that the Cuban protesters were essentially chanting these claims were the element that upset the regime the most. These claims, these chantings, because we need to remember that Cuba is basically the typical and classic tyranny, where when the regime will simply not allow that the population even says the wrong word. So getting to this point, it is important to remember that the protests of July 2021 were quite historic, considering the amount of people that decided to protest all across the island, all across the Caribbean island. Of course, these protests were made not only because of the way the Cuban people is sick and tired of the lack of freedom in the island, but also the COVID pandemic and the way this crisis destroyed the Cuban economy even more. Reporting from Medellín, Colombia, Luis Orozco, Newsweek.